Well, from two courts in Durban to the High Court in Tswana, where today Eskom's been asking a judge for leave to appeal last year's ruling that load shedding is unconstitutional and that government must take steps to ensure that facilities like clinics, hospitals and schools have electricity. The case was brought by a variety of political parties, including the UDM and ActionSA. In the end, the High Court ruled that government has a duty to provide electricity to these facilities, but Eskom and the Ministry of Public Enterprises have said they can't actually stop load shedding and that load shedding is being implemented to protect the national grid. Well, Mpho Madisha is the Mineral Resources and Energy spokesperson for the political party ActionSA, one of the parties in this case. Mpho, good afternoon to you. So Eskom wants to appeal this case. They're asking for permission to do that. I presume you oppose that.
Hi, Steve. Definitely we are in opposition to that. We have had an opportunity to sit in and listen to what they had to present, and we are fairly convinced that the case as presented does favor what we had stood for earlier on. Look, we are really after the more humanitarian elements of saying when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to schools, when it comes to our police stations, we ought to make some sort of an exemption to those. And really the exemption is born out of the fact that these are vulnerable institutions that offer a very important service to communities. And I don't imagine that South Africans could be indifferent for us to saying, let us help hospitals to run without any interruptions in power. Let us help the police to be able to respond to all the issues we have in our community that is riddled with crime and so many other problems. Let us provide all the hospitals, all the schools, make sure that our children are going to school without interruptions. I think those are very sensible propositions. So the fact that I think they were in opposition to that was quite a surprise. In actual fact, we are wondering if it's a matter of incapability to make sure that we can do that or whether they're just unwilling.
Okay, well, let's explore that, because if I were arguing for Eskom, and I'm not, but if I were arguing for Eskom, I'd say no one in their right mind, excuse me, wants a doctor to have to, put stitches into a child's knee or, heaven forbid, their face by the light of a cell phone. Every single police station, every clinic should have electricity all the time, so for that matter should every library. It's just not possible to do. As I understand, electricity networks in our country, and I've spoken to experts about this, the cost of isolating these facilities would just be astronomical. It would be cheaper to fix Eskom. But isn't that the point? You may win a legal ruling, but that doesn't change the laws of physics.
Of course, it doesn't change the laws of physics, but the laws of physics would suggest that there are other new things to consider, things like microgrids that you can put in place. You can, in the meantime, provide other auxiliary systems. We're talking here the use of generators as an example. And we don't expect that all of it can be solved overnight, but we're saying there should be an attempt made to begin to say, while we're continuing to experience load shedding, and remember, we had this from 2007, and we've had promises for a very long time that load shedding is going to end just around the corner, but that hasn't happened. And I think to make a commitment on humanitarian terms of saying we would like to be able to assist these very critical services, I think that just showing that kind of posture is very important. And we believe that you have to start somewhere. Yes, you can't solve all the problems overnight, but you have to start somewhere, especially on critical services that we just mentioned.
So, I mean, again, I sort of agree with you, but if you go back to 2007, and I've lived through it all, as we all have, there is some evidence that load shedding is being much reduced now. And I know that we live in a cynical time, and when the electricity minister promises again to end load shedding, like everybody else, I kind of want to go, really? But even the Reserve Bank governor, Setso today, said in their predictions over the next 2 years, they expect load shedding to be much reduced and to have a much reduced impact on our economy. So is there a risk that you've brought the right application at exactly the wrong time?
I don't believe so. And part of the reason is this. If you look at what are some of the underlying forces that causes load shedding, they are technical, but there are also those that are administrative, and there are those that are of a corrupt nature or maladministration. And the ones that pertain to maladministration, I don't think the government has made enough effort to deal with those. We're talking about corruption that is running right across the whole organization, from your normal workers who are doing maintenance, and you see maintenance components missing and maintenance not being done proper. So all of that is contributing to what then becomes these unscheduled interruptions that are unexpected, even when we have technical data that suggests that no, everything is coming okay. But you end up having these sort of things. And it's because I think the government is not putting a lot of effort, enough effort to deal with some of these underlying issues. And therefore, I wouldn't be too confident to suggest that everything is turned around until we are able to deal with all of the underlying forces.
You're the Mineral Resources and Energy spokesperson for ActionSA, and Herman Mashaba, your leader, has suggested that you would be part of a team that would go into government. You'd have much reduced ministers, I noticed. How would you fix load shedding if you went into government?
Well, if we went into government, first of all, we'll deal with some of these underlying issues that I've just mentioned. We'll deal with corruption. We'll make any mismanagement to be met with hefty punitive measures. We will make sure that we deal with the basics. And, I can see that there's some elements of that being done, but it would have to be continued. We would have to have the right maintenance strategies in place. You'd be aware that at some point Eskom had a run-to-fail maintenance philosophy where there was no proper maintenance done, but things were let to run until things stopped working. So you need a proper maintenance philosophy. And then thirdly, we would like to explore other options that allow us to open up the market. We believe that part of what is a challenge with what we have currently is that Eskom is a monopoly. We would love to put in a bit of a competition in there, have other people who can supply more power as independent power producers, and make sure that that system is very live and active. We would like to have, I mentioned the whole point of having microgrids. I think there are areas where the grid may struggle to reach, and it would make a lot of sense to begin to think of ideas of putting up microgrids to be able to serve communities in those places.
So you'd want a greater role for the private sector?
Absolutely.
I mean, I understand why you say that, and the President himself has said that we can never have a monopoly on electricity production again. I think it's hard to argue with that statement. But privatization in electricity can actually be fiendishly difficult. Anyone who lived in California 15 years ago will tell you how difficult it can be. Are you confident it's the right option?
Look, what I'm confident of is that if there's the right competition in the market, it can spur the right behavior. And of that, I'm confident. As to how the modalities will have to look like, we will have to really go through the thick of it. If you think of what we did with, for instance, telecom, at a time when the telecoms was heavily dominated by just one player. But after the changes we've made, and they were difficult, unions were in oppositions, but, we've made it through. Today, you look at telecom, it's fairly competitive to some of those players who've been also themselves competitive in the likes of MTN and Vodacom.
They switched off several hospitals in Gauteng because they hadn't paid. I mean, there are risks to what happens here.
Sure, there are risks, but the point is that, there's certain risks also of not doing anything. We are already sitting in that risk, as it were.
Mpho Madisha, thank you. The Mineral Resources and Energy spokesperson for ActionSA.